Howdy, folks. Pardon me. Thanks for tuning in. Hope y'all doing okay today. If you like any of the content that I've been making here, just driving around in my cars, yapping about the things that I think about, feel free to give me a like, share, comment, subscribe, hit the notification bell if you want to know whenever I post new stuff. And if there's anything that I haven't spoke about that you want to know my opinion on, said, just leave that in the comments section. I don't even mind having to do a little bit of digging and research to become more informed about it if it's something I'm unfamiliar with. All that said, I want to attempt to make a great case for the First Amendment being the standard that we use in big tech as far as what's censored content. Now, the First Amendment is an absolute. As an example, if I were to put out a call on social media outside of private messaging, and even then it would break the law, but the social media companies aren't liable for it, of, direct call for violence against a group of people or a person in general, I'd be breaking the law, and I definitely agree that content like that should be taken down. I think that content where anyone's doc should be taken down just for their own personal safety. But all that said, I think that if the First Amendment were used as the benchmark for what gets taken down and what gets left up on social media platforms, I think it actually does more good than bad in the long run. And here's why I think that. Free speech is often offensive. And I'll give a great case in point here. Okay, rewind to the founding of the country. In the Constitution, in the Declaration of Independence, we hold these truths to be self-evident: all men are created equal. That wasn't implemented, and there's a lot of historical reasons why it wasn't. The biggest one, and I'm not making an excuse for it, just simply saying why, is the founding fathers needed the southern colonies, which weren't as far out as they were during the Civil War, but they needed those southern colonies where slavery was a huge share of production in order to wage the coming Revolutionary War. So, doing away with slavery would have fractured the colonies, and the northern colonies would not have been able to have stood, or wouldn't have stood as good of a chance of standing against the British Empire. Not making an excuse, saying it's fact. They made a calculated decision, and then they did eventually clean up slavery later. Now, I said all that to say this. During the mid-1800s, 1850 to 1861 or 2, before the Civil War started, when all the talk of abolition was happening, it was definitely offensive to a lot of people. Just stop and think about it for a second. And I do not condone slavery or segregation or racism in any of its forms. But slaveholders not only had a huge stake of their personal wealth invested in them continuing to own slaves and not have to pay them. Sure, they had to feed and clothe them in order to get the most out of their, in order to get good labor out of them. But they had to purchase slaves, which is just unimaginable, putting yourself in the shoes of the person being bought and sold that is a human being. Why is the person in front of me doing 15 in a 55? I'm really puzzled right now. So, I mean, you would struggle to even come close to putting yourselves in their shoes as far as how emotionally traumatic being bought and sold would be, and the prospect of that always looming over your head. I can't imagine how traumatic that would have been, even, not counting the fact that families were split up due to slaveholders' decisions. As a mother, a father, a child, you could be ripped away from your family because someone made a financial decision, which is horrifying to think about. Now, said all that to say that, people that held slaves and had vast capital tied up in owning other people, and vast capital gains coming in off the fruits of others' labor that was not being compensated. The talk of doing away with slavery and essentially getting rid of someone's property with no financial compensation to them was probably pretty offensive. And there was actually a beatdown that happened on the House of Representatives or Senate floor. I don't remember which one, but there was a beatdown. I forget who was involved, but someone was talking pro-abolition, giving a pro-abolition speech on the floor of the House or the Senate. Again, I wish I remembered. And someone else got up and physically assaulted him with a walking stick and really messed this guy up. So I don't doubt that it was offensive to those that were pro-slavery. And, you can talk about many things that might be offensive to somebody. Well, ideas can often be offensive, whether it's a good idea or a bad idea to do it. Okay, if you wanted to make a fantastic argument to, for example, get rid of slavery, stop eating livestock because it's cruel to animals or killing the planet or not healthy for you, I personally really enjoy a good steak or chicken or pork. And if it ever ate salad, I'm all in on eating it. So, but if you wanted to prove that argument to me, you need to risk being offensive. If you wanted to prove that slavery was a great moral sin, you need to be able to be offensive to some people. If you want to talk about anything, any forward-thinking idea, whether it's right or wrong, you need to risk being offensive. And then not only that, you need to be able to be offended. Because if you have a great forward-thinking idea that flies in the face of any sort of tradition, you're obviously going to catch a great deal of static for having that idea and for talking about what's on your mind and, positing your theories, as it were. So you're going to catch a great deal of flack and be called to task to defend why you think the way you think, which is worthwhile because you will either have to have thought through your proposals enough to defend them adequately in the face of intellectual attack, or you will have to be able to realize that, hey, this idea that I had about the government mandating 20% extra taxes on Tuesday isn't really a great idea. Or, and fill in the blank with your bad idea there. So I think that people need to be okay with getting offended, and that's why I think that free speech should be the guide, that the First Amendment should kind of be the guiding light when it comes to social media. And the only reason I say that, absolutely, they're private companies. They can do whatever they want. They're accountable not to the people that use them and enjoy the free services, which you're the product, not the consumer. But that's another story entirely. They're accountable to the people that have invested in the money and want return on that investment. Okay, fair. But the reason why I say that is because all social media has become the proverbial city center and town square and place where ideas are exchanged. A lot of the older clubs and lodges and going to this or that meeting on the second Tuesday of the month is dead. People get on social media and argue with each other, and that's fine. Matter of fact, I posted about a 3-paragraph long counterpoint in reply to someone's reply to my comment on their Facebook status. Oddly enough, about how the guy believes that gun culture catches more clicks and views than education and reading does, which he's probably right. But the way the comic was framed made it seem as though people prize guns more than they prize knowledge, which I completely disagree with. And we've had multiple comments back and forth about this, and this guy, we disagree on quite a bit of things, but I deeply enjoy talking with him because he's one of the few people that I can talk with, and the comments are mainly respectful. Every once in a while we might get a good sarcastic jab in there, but it's pretty respectful conversation. Now, if you are the kind of person that is going to berate me and be a jerk in the Facebook comments, I'm probably going to start ignoring you very quickly. And I'll probably mute your notifications so I don't have to put up with you, because I don't particularly enjoy getting into these heated debates and name calling and assuming motives. But that's my decision. And I can mute that, and I don't report those comments to Facebook because I practice what I preach when it comes to that. The only things that I'll report on social media are direct calls of violence, doxing, and there have been a handful of times where I don't know how this got on there, but I've seen nudity on Facebook, and I've reported that. And it wasn't like clinical nudity, if that's such a thing, like going through a medical textbook and showing human anatomy for scientific purposes. This was, we'll say, more erotica type stuff. So, anyway, that's my take on it. That's why I think social media should abide by the First Amendment. I think better ideas would happen if they did, because people could risk being offensive, and being offensive is where ideas come from. That's what I got for today, folks. Thanks for tuning in. Take care, and catch y'all next time.